Hi everybody, Dhaman Mehta here, and thank you for once again joining me on my journey as I go through my favorites list on FIMFiction.net. Yes, I know it has been a long time since my last video. If you've been keeping up to date, it's been like I think 3 weeks plus, and I blame one fanfic for that, and that fanfic is Taylor Varga. It's not the one that's going to be talked about in this video because it's not on my favorites list. That's on a freaking it's from a different site completely. It's not on fanfiction.net. But I decided I wanted to reread it because I saw it come up again. Never finished it the first time, and I've been rereading it for the past 2.5 weeks, and I'm still not done. So, yeah, it's gonna take a while. And it doesn't help that like literally the next story on my list right after this video that I have to read is another 900,000 word story. So yeah, don't. Hopefully, it won't take 3 weeks, but don't expect it next week either. Um, but yeah, okay, here we go. For those that don't know, I've been reading fan fiction for a long time. Fanfiction.net was the first place where I started reading it, and that's where I have my favorites list originally when I started this series of over 1,200 stories. I've pruned about, I think I've pruned over 300 off my list so far, and I've gotten halfway. We've read over 600 stories, 600 plus stories so far, and I got another like 600 to go. So let's dive into this list. These have been sorted by publication date. So these stories, I believe, were still in 2012. Is that right? Yes. So we're in February of 2012. So let's start with the first one being My Little Shinobi, Friendship is Eternal by GespenstKAF. And if you couldn't figure out by the title, this is a Naruto crossover with My Little Pony. Um, that's not much to say about this. It's not complete. Basically, it goes through a fictional version of it's not a it doesn't follow like an idea of canon. It follow it because this is before Naruto officially ended. So Naruto, it implies that like Naruto's ending would involve fighting the Jubi, ten-tailed beast. Naruto destroys it, and then because of space tearing shenanigans, ends up in Equestria a few days before the Summer Sun celebration. Uh, Again, not much to say about this, as it's basically him getting healed, and then is there for about the first 2 or 3 episodes of the actual first season of the show of My Little Pony. And while the interactions between him and the main six and a couple other ponies are fun, there's nothing really substantial that you'll want to come back to here again and again. It has some ideas on the horizon that might have turned out well, but the author just stopped writing. So there's no. Even though the summary here says that, like, yeah, future chapters will be posted on FIMFiction, there aren't actually any chapters there. So take a quick peek, but you'll forget about this soon after, and it's not going to stay on my list. Number 2 is An Alternate Keitaro Urashima by Karndragon. And so this is a love hinafic, solely love hinafic, that basically takes place in the real world. Now some of you might say, hey, what do you mean real world? There's no magic or anything in Love Hina. It is a real world. It's like, to that I say, you try and attack somebody with a sword while yelling pervert at the top of your lungs and see how long that does you. In this story, like, the main conceit is that Kaytaro basically forgot or just decided to give up on the promise and decided to live his life as just, okay, I can't get into Todai, I'll get into some other university, and doesn't just follow along with his grandma's plans. Whereas all the girls at the inn and the grandma basically still act just like they normally do. But like I said, in the real world, it takes place in the real world where cops and everything don't have time for that shit and do not accept it. So this just, that everybody acts the same, but since reality doesn't bend over backwards to accommodate them, This just leads to them getting one mess after another, where the consequences keep piling up. Where Kaytaro just tries to move on and live his own life. The actual content of the story is fine, and if you want to see the girls get some reality smacked into their faces, you will be satisfied with this story. I just found myself getting really tired because it's just the same cycle over and over and over again of just, okay, normal, the girls act like they normally do, so incident occurs, cops are brought in or whatever, girls try to do something and like possibly find some apologize, and then they end up causing another incident, and then the cycle repeats again and again and again. It becomes really frustrating, and as the story kept going on, I just realized I didn't have enough of a hate boner against these characters to just keep reading this when I could instead read stories about characters I actually like. It's not bad, but it's more just kind of like, it's more if you really want a bashing fic or just something where the girls are just getting the shit kicked out of them in a sense, metaphorically, like, then this is kind of your cup of tea. But for me, I just grew tired and wanted to move past these people, so it's not for me, and it's going to fall off my list. Next is Forge the Path by GreatDario. And this is a Star Wars crossover with Final Fantasy VII that basically starts in Star Wars A New Hope. Right after Darth Vader kills Obi-Wan, he ends up in Midgar and next to Aerith, and basically just joins the main cast a little of FF7. He joins Aerith a little bit before the events of the game take off. So I have a soft spot for FF7. It's my favorite game of all time. And so I enjoyed a lot of this, even though there were a lot of scenes that are ripped straight from the game. There's a lot of just retreading the game with occasional like chimes in because, they had to talk about Obi-Wan. But adding a Jedi, and he's not just a Jedi, but he's restored to his youth, did bring a bunch of new changes to that. Did add a lot to the story. His camaraderie with Aerith and the others is really enjoyable, and the butterflies that he startles is rather large, including a big one with the Sector 7 pillar. Sadly, like many other stories on my list here, it was never finished. However, there is still enough here as they do get out of Midgar, and there's enough to chew on, like, that you can definitely find some enjoyment in this fic, which I did, and it's going to stay on my list. So this is number 4, which is another Naruto My Little Pony crossover. This one called My Little Naruto Friendship is Where Am I? By DragonLS. And this is, like I said, Naruto crossover where Naruto dies because of something really dumb, and then ends up as a pony in the Everfree Forest. So like the inciting incident of what sends Naruto to the world is like really stupid and like implies that Naruto is just super naive, trusting, and dumb. But let's just move past that because it's not that important, really. The story itself is a pretty lighthearted affair with a laid-back tone that goes through a few small adventures before the author stopped updating. I feel like I'm saying that again and again. It's like, that happens a lot of these stories. Some of them are not complete, and definitely probably more when you go... The ones that are not one-shots, probably more of them are not going to be complete. Regardless, this one is basically a small bunch of stories where Naruto, like, hangs around and just does one thing after another. Like, there's a few hints at a grand adventure at the start, but those never amounted to anything. And what we're left with is basically a bunch of filler episodes where Naruto hangs out with various ponies, helps them out, while nothing substantial really happens. I still had a lot of fun as this story kind of fills the role of like comfort food, like something to snack on and just enjoy and like kind of like feel like vibe with, or like just to when you don't have anything you really want to think about or like super invest yourself in, just like to enjoy some fun times with. And I feel like it fills that role nicely. simple, enjoyable. I wouldn't mind coming back to this as like mindless comfort food. It's gonna stay on my list. All right, next is Harry Potter and the Ultimate Force by Dark King 666, which this is a Harry Potter My Goddess crossover where basically, the Norns find out, oh, hey, there's a prophecy, Harry's prophecy, that's going off the rails. We got to fix it. So they send Belldandy, Erd, and Skuld to go raise Harry. This story's pretty dull. So it's complete and it's listed as complete. Goes through them getting Harry back when he's like 9 years old, and then having him finish his first year. But it's really really dull. It's just them showing up, grabbing the kid, and then training him up a bit while doing a couple things like opening up a potion shop and like giving themselves a place in the society. And that does causes some things to shake up, like, oh hey, the Longbottoms get cured. Hey, Sirius is revealed to not have a trial, and he's out of prison, and he's now taking ownership of the thing. This is happening. But it's at the same time, it feels like it's just really nothing's there. The story itself is just not engaging. There's nothing really humorous or funny. Nothing, no action or anything. There's nothing to make it stay with you. Nothing, there's no interesting thing that I'm reminded of, not even like a single moment. And I've had fics where literally one single moment or one joke is enough to make me keep it on this list. I mean, granted, there's usually not completely incompetent for the rest of it as well, but like here there is literally nothing that I could attach to mentally or even really remember of this story, even though I literally just read this yesterday. And I just, it's a thing that's really kind of pointless. There was a sequel that was like basically, I think they were going to try and write like one story for each year, but the second story never got finished. So it's like you don't even really have anything to really dive into for later bits. I'd say just skip this without worry. It is not going to stay on my list. All right, two more. Next is Harry Potter Crossover Collection by Vaughn. And if you couldn't guess by the title, this is another collection of half-baked ideas or unfinished stories that the author just decided to stop working on and just collate into a single place. So I've come back to this collection over the years, probably over 100 times. And every single time I would read the first chapter, the first idea that they had, and none of the other ones. I remembered the first chapter very well. Like even as soon as I saw that this was the next one, I remembered exactly what the first chapter was. Couldn't tell you any of the other ones. And I don't even really understand why I kept coming back to that first chapter. Because the first chapter is a pretty simple thing where like Harry gets kicked, his aunt and uncle kick him out, and he's like, you're gonna go live with your grandfather, who's turns out to be Charles Xavier. But like again, all of these chapters are really just prologue. So that chapter is just him getting kicked out, being sent to America, and then just walking, and then showing up at the institute, meeting like Cyclops and Storm and Jean Grey, and then passing out. And like that's it. There's no like even big setup or reunion with Professor X or anything. And I don't know why I kept coming back to that, or remembering that at all. Because coming back and rereading it again now, this time, and trying to be analytical about it, it's a good idea. Especially because like the things where it's like I don't know if he didn't say anything about magics, but so all the other people just think he's a normal human, and it's like, oh, the normal human amongst mutants and stuff like that would have been interesting, but again, it stops right there. There's nothing to go off of. The rest of the ideas that were there, none of them really stuck out. A bunch of them were even way shorter and like single scenes. A couple of them. and I just didn't care for any of these aside from that weird connection I have with the first one. Again, since they're all basically just prologues and simple starting points, there's not much to these ideas other than just a setup. And the thing is, sometimes that's enough. Sometimes there's still really interesting scenes in those setups that I've had from previous ones. This one didn't really have that for anything there. So aside from that first scene, which I still might come back to it on occasion, but I still can't really figure out why. I just feel like this one is something that you can take a look at once, but can basically feel free to skip this as well, because there's no real must see stuff here, and it's not going to stay on my list. Right, last one for this fic. Oh my god, last one for this video is For the Greater Good by Sap Oz. And this is a Harry Potter crossover with Mass Effect, where Harry and Hermione, after the events of canon, basically decide to build a spaceship and accidentally fling themselves into the future. This is another one that, like, I probably saw it when it first came out and was like, oh, this seems interesting, let's add it to the favorites list, it might be really cool. And the author just never continued it. It's basically just prologue, setting up another thing, was just prologue, setting up an idea, setting up the team of characters and like their long-term goal, but then there's nothing there. Like there's a little bit of characterization, or like we get some, like, from like one of the members of the team that are like, oh, Harry and Hermione they're so immoral now and ends justify the means type, and like, oh, that's bad, but like it doesn't really get addressed that much, and it's already starts like seem to be backpedaling. The fourth character there is kind of just a tag along as an experiment, and there is that whole behavior. I will fully say that like Harry and Hermione's behavior in this is very much like the ends justify the means is totally true, and they're just like, I'll do whatever we need to, like obliviate somebody, fine, whatever, we need to protect ourselves. She's being annoying, like execution, like experimentation, all that shit. It's like they're just like, whatever, we just want to get to space. But at the same time, it's not like it gets dived into, so it basically just becomes like, okay, that's like a little skeevy, not cool. But again, the story never actually picks off. Nothing's there. There's no really cool scenes or anything that's like super interesting. It's just a idea of, okay, Harry and Hermione and their two tag-alongs are now in the Mass Effect universe in that times frame, and they're gonna try and do some stuff with like the magical world, but that never happened. You can skip this without worry. It's not going to stay on my list. So there we go. 7 more stories that... Oh god, it took me so long to make this video. And it's not going to get any easier later on. But yeah, here we go. Fan fiction status of my favorites list time. We have now read 682 stories, of which 335 of them have stayed on my list. So there we go. As always, links and descriptions of these stories are in the description of the video, as well as links to my profile, my thread on Sufficient Velocity, where I also lay out all these things, as well as a playlist for if you want to see the whole journey of this through all the 682 stories from the beginning. Or if you want to jump around anywhere, the whole playlist is there. Please feel free to leave a comment if you actually like any of these stories, or if you agree with my taste, or even not. Or leave a like if you like this video. Subscribe if you want to actually see these in your feed when I eventually put the next one out, whenever that may be. And otherwise, yeah, thanks for watching this video, and I will see you guys next time, whenever that is. Take care.